Chapter 15. Over a cup of tea, I told Mrs. Saxena what I knew about the case so far, leaving out Saxena's antics towards Zara for the time being. And that is why we are here to talk to everyone who knew Zara until we find the real killer. The police won't let the innocent watchman go, I said. But why talk to me? Said Mrs. Saxena in a bewildered way. I hardly met her, maybe once or twice when I visited Professor Saxena in office. She seemed like a nice girl. Was Professor Saxena friendly with his students? Saurabh said. Mrs. Saxena looked taken aback. Not particularly. He is so lost in his work. He is not a friendly person in general. A bit grumpy always. If you ask me, Mrs. Saxena said. Did he ever go meet his PhD students in their hostels? Never. He is the dean and their guide. Why would he? Mrs. Saxena said, somewhat offended by my question. Mrs. Saxena sir went to meet Zara 8 times in her hostel in the last 3 months. Saurabh said, what? It's in the hostel register, I said. I'm sorry to tell you this, Mrs. Saxena, but I think Sir had an extra interest in Zara. Extra? He said, confused. At 40, Mrs. Saxena had probably led a shielded campus life. Her idea of a controversy or scandal would be if the maid skipped work 2 days in a row. He wanted a relationship with Zara, I said calmly. He propositioned her several times. What? Mrs. Saxena gasped. The whistle of a pressure cooker in the kitchen disrupted our conversation. Black dal in the pressure cooker? Saurav said, sniffling in the direction of the kitchen. I glared at him. Mrs. Saxena exploded. Are you insane? My husband? One of the world's best researcher in his field? Then the cooker whistles again. Saurav jumped up from the sofa. I will go turn the gas off, Mrs. Saxena, he said. 2 whistles are enough for black dal, right? She nodded grimly. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, Mrs. Saxena, I said smoothly. This is 100% nonsense. 101%. Is there any proof? She said. If the news made you uncomfortable, the proof will make you even more so. What is the proof? I held out my phone to her. She read the email quickly and returned my phone. Saurav came back from the kitchen. All of us sat in awkward silence for a few seconds. I'm not here to spoil your marriage, I said. Too late for that, she said. She picked up her phone and called her husband. Come home, Mrs. Saxena said when he answered. No, right now. I said, come home now. I don't care about the Senate meeting. You come home now, Vineet. She turned to me. What do you want? She said. Your help in finding out the truth. I said. What truth? You have proof. You have ruined my life already. I wanted to tell her that it was the professor who had ruined things, not me. However, I decided to stick to the agenda. Your husband might have killed Zara alone. What? Vineet? What is wrong with you guys? My husband was trying to have an affair? Is a murderer? Please be calm, Mrs. Saxena, Saurav said, and listen to Keshav. Ma'am, he had a clear motive. Zara could have exposed him once she received her PhD degree. He had the opportunity. He lives on campus. He could have stepped out from home at night and walked to Himadri. He could enter Zara's room through the window, kill her, and leave before anybody found out. He could have been back in his bed, I said. You mean our bed? Mrs. Saxena said. Yes, ma'am. It is Vineet we are talking about. He went to IIT and Stanford. You really think he could do such a thing? Mrs. Saxena said. Did you really think your husband could be sexually harassing a PhD student? Saurav said. Mrs. Saxena fell silent. Ma'am, this may be too much for you, but we need to know the truth, I said. What? Did your husband leave home that night? I said. Before she could answer, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Saxena got up and opened the door. Professor Saxena walked in almost in slow motion as he had a slight limp in his left leg. What the? He screamed when he saw Saurav and me in his house. What the hell are you doing here? How dare you come to my house? Mrs. Saxena went up to Professor Saxena. Before he could react, she hit him across his ear. Pammy? Professor Saxena said, hand on ear. Mrs. Saxena deposited two more slabs in response. Hell hath no furry like a Punjabi woman scorned. They are lying, Pammy, Professor Saxena said, almost in tears. I know they are not, Mrs. Saxena said. Saurav and I stood up to leave. We just had a few more questions for Mrs. Saxena. We can come back later. I said politely. No, wait. Mrs. Saxena said, ask me now. Vinith should be here. We sat down again. Professor Saxena continued to stand, hand on ear. Mrs. Saxena, where was your husband on the night of February 8th? What does a stupid wife like me know? He could have left for an hour while I was asleep. No, for me, I didn't. I gave up my career in California for you, Vineet. You slime ball. I was a senior consultant, all for your Desh Bhakti and research obsession, and this is what you do to me? For me, nothing happened because she didn't let anything happen, Mrs. Saxena said shrewdly, taking a step towards him with her hand raised. Professor Saxena took a step back. Please don't hit me. I will ruin you. You bloody creep, she turned to me. What do I have to do? Should I sign a document saying my husband was missing that night? No, Professor Saxena screamed and fell at his wife's feet. That would do it, right? Enough proof to put him away for life, Mrs. Saxena said. I shrugged. I had no idea. Whatever you give us, we will submit to the police, I said. Professor Saxena continued to kneel on the floor. I beg you, yes, I liked her. She was beautiful and smart. I became weak, but nothing happened, and I swear on you, I didn't kill her. So who did? I said, even as his wife shrieked. Not on me. Don't swear on me, you dirty man. I don't know. Boy, go to the police, Mrs. Saxena said curiously. Did anyone see me go to the hostel that night or leave my home? I will say I did, Mrs. Saxena said. Ma'am, you are angry now. We want to know the truth. More than anything else, I said. Can you please think in a calm manner and let us? Mrs. Saxena interrupted me. How can I be calm? I left a $200,000 a year job for this idiot, all for his principles. I stood up to leave. We will give you some privacy. Let's go, Saurav. Sure. And ma'am, just one more thing, Saurav said at the door. What? Mrs. Saxena said. Don't leave the pressure cooker closed. The black dal will get overcooked. Dean Saxena? Rana said, almost choking on his extra hot, full cream, 8% fat milk, and 100% free latte at the Horse Khas Starbucks. Saurav and I sat across from him. Inspector Rana put his cup down. He gave out a loud, Ravan like laugh. Yes, I said in a steady voice, and you will agree there is enough evidence. Yes, Rana said and continued to laugh. So, why are you laughing, sir? Saurav said, still a bit afraid whenever he spoke to Rana. I'm not laughing at you. The whole situation is so funny that Ass was being so righteous, not letting me come to campus. Turn out he's just a turkey prof, Rana said and laughed again. I stared at my cup of milk and waited for the inspector to finish giggling. He spoke again. From the watchman to the dean of IIT, wow, just look at the class jump. The media will have so much fun with this. So, we arrest him now? I said. How does it work? Not so simple. We definitely need the wife's testimony that her husband was out that night. Otherwise, I am not sure. Not sure? It's a masala media story, definitely. But releasing the watchman to arrest the dean? If we get this wrong, Delhi police will be lynched. So you won't arrest him? Get me the wife's testimony, Rana said. He checked his watch. I have to go. I have to get a haircut. We saw Inspector Rana to his gypsy. What about Zara's email? I said. Only shows the prof was a pervert. I can't book him for the murder for that. I nodded. The inspector patted my back. Not bad though. Good work. Maggie, again? The maid has cooked gobi aloo and chapatis. I am bored of the maid food, I said. We stood in the tiny kitchen of our apartment. I stir fried peas, carrot, and capsicum in a kadhai. I added garam masala to the vegetables and tossed them around with the ladle. On the other burner, I boiled 3 packets of Maggi noodles. Saurav saw the quantity in the vessel and added 2 more packets. I served out my improvised value added Maggi noodles in 2 bowls. We moved to the dining table and ate our one dish dinner. So, Mrs. Saxena declined, huh? Saurav said, slurping a long noodle into his mouth. Yeah, she had said it in anger. Later on, she must have reflected. Her husband might be a jerk, but she doesn't want him in jail for murder. So, no wife testimony. Yes, I said and refilled my bowl. If we have to get the prof, we need more solid evidence. The noodles are superb, by the way, Saurav said. Thanks, I blinked. You think Saxena could have done it? If Zara could destroy his life's work, yes, Saurav said. He didn't show up in the CCTV footage of the hostel entrance. The only other way to come up is the mango tree, I said. Yeah, Saurav said. And since the window was open, it means Zara opened it. Yeah, she could have. She thinks this idiot pervert has come up the tree to wish me. Fine. A few more weeks and I am free. She opens the window. Then, Saurav said, he enters, kills her, leaves back in bed. Cuddle up to his pummy and off story. Yeah? Totally adds up, right? I said. Saurav thought for a few seconds and then shook his head. What? No, not possible, Saurav said. What's not possible? Limp. He has a limp, Saurav said. What? Did you see he walked in so slowly into his house? Didn't he have a slight limp? Did he get hurt recently? Not sure. Open your laptop, Saurav said. We searched YouTube video of Professor Saxena. Most of them were mega boring talk at engineering conferences that could also double up as videos to cure insomnia. In one from a few months back, we could see him walking up to the stage. It wasn't just that day, he was a proper limp, I said. Saurav kept quiet as he browsed through a few more videos. He couldn't have climbed the mango tree, I said after a few minutes. Yeah, Saurav said. It was so tough for me if one of your leg isn't okay. Impossible. It's not Saxena, I said and slammed the laptop shut. I better tell Rana. I stepped away to call the inspector. Saurav waited till I ended the call and came back to the dining table. What did he say? That we are idiots? We would have made him look so bad if he had arrested the dean. True. Anything else? Just that and a few affectionate daily abuses, I said.